well, the shorefront of Sasebo. No one's here yet. Well, in chat, just me, because obviously this is all very impromptu. But yeah, we're here out on our penultimate stop and our southernmost stop for this Japan trip. We are going to another museum tomorrow, and then I think we're heading up to Isashi. Everybody else is being a little bit mad and going up via Shinkansen for like most of the day, like 12, 13 hours, something like that, and then a drive at the end of it. I, on the other hand, am being sensible and taking a flight. So, yeah, we are just... There's a Japanese training ship there. That's the Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force training vessel. It's a rather interesting concept, actually. So she's not a training vessel in and of herself, i.e. you don't have cadets and so forth on board in that way, but she's what you'd call a training support ship. So if they go out to do live fire exercises, torpedo practice, etc., she's the one that goes out and fishes up all the torpedoes, acts as umpire, all that kind of thing. So she's a support vessel, which I guess is why they are fine with, you know, her just being here on the Sasebo waterfront. There is obviously the Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force naval base somewhere around here, but I mean, literally, that is the railway line, that kind of glass structure there. So I've come, I came off the train about there, just behind the tree, came down there, went, and then just on the other side of that, the actual train station building is my hotel. So yeah, I just thought I'd come down here and have a bit of a chat with people in the hour or so before we find dinner. I appreciate, obviously, it's what is it? It is about 5-ish here. Let me just double check. Yeah, it's just coming up to 5 o'clock here in Japan. So I guess it's going to be the middle of the night in the US, and it's going to be some point in the morning, sort of 9-10ish for coming up to lunchtime for various people in Europe. JJ the Third says, how is the food treating you? The food's actually been really good. I was a bit worried, but it turns out that the Japanese have a pleasing amount of meat in their diet, and some of their stuff is very vegetation heavy, but not all of it. So that just means I choose the ones that aren't very vegetation heavy. I've discovered I'm guessing is a chain called Pepper Shack, where they basically just serve you a ridiculously hot skillet and a whole bunch of steak, which is basically stuck on the skillet raw, and then you just cook it at the table as you like it, with a bunch of tongs doing quick flips and everything. Billy asking about the Yamato Museum. So the Yamato Museum in Kure, that's where we just came from. I was in Kure this morning. So we visited some of the Yamato Museum, made some very interesting contacts with some of the museum staff. So there will be some very, very interesting videos coming out of that in the future, once I dive a little bit deeper into some of the archival records they've got. Like, for example, did you know all of the explosive tests and the shell tests, you know, the ones that led to the Japanese adopting the underwater diving shell, all of those tests that they did on the battleship Tosa, or the hull of the Tosa, after it was clear she wasn't going to be a battleship anymore, they have the whole thing, 140 pages of reports on those tests, all digitized. Obviously all in Japanese, so there's a little bit of translation work there to be done, but it can be done, and I will be doing it at some point. But we went to the satellite museum, which they've set up while the main museum is shut. Unfortunately, theoretically we could have gone into the main museum where the big Yamato model is. Unfortunately, we weren't able to. There's a whole combination of factors. Dr. Clark is probably better placed to explain more than me, but the general gist of it comes down to the fact that the particular time that we happened to be in Kure, the last 3 days, coincides with a lot of interior works, which means that even if we had gone inside, it wouldn't have made the blindest bit of difference, because everything's under tarp and scaffolding, including the model, to stop it getting damaged by all the works. So we would have been able to go, look, here is, you know, a 100-foot long tarpaulin. Which, to be fair, you could see at any decent hardware store. But we did see a bunch of other interesting stuff surrounding it, not just the satellite museum that they set up with some of the artifacts, but obviously 18.1-inch shells, and the gigantic lathe that they used to cut the Yamato's 18.1-inch guns. That's just, you know, sitting there because... any Godzilla sightings? Not yet. Did you visit the sub-museum opposite the Yamato? Yes, the JMSDF Museum, I'm just going to call it the Japanese Navy Museum now, from now on. The JMSDF Museum is actually really interesting. They've got a whole level to do with minesweeping. They've got a temporary exhibit on the latest and greatest in the Japanese Navy, hence the hat. Kaga herself was just out there in the bay, and then let's say second floor is all about minesweeping, which is obviously mostly to do with the demining efforts that followed the Second War, and then the follow-on to that, the Japanese Navy has become quite good at minesweeping and mine hunting as time has gone on. And then the third floor is about the Japanese submarine force. Although that was interesting because I mean, okay, technically they can get away with it because it is the Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force Museum, not the Japanese Navy Museum. But I did find it very funny that the first bit is, here are the first couple of submarines of the Imperial Japanese Navy, you know, circa the Russo-Japanese War. And moving on, here's a Gato class that the Americans gave us in the 1950s. And I'm sitting there going, there were quite a lot of submarines in between those, but the museum's like, no. And moving forwards into the rest of the sort of Cold War era submarines, I guess, which I guess that's the way they want to present it. I'll just have to look elsewhere for the the Imperial Japanese Navy submarines. Although yesterday we were at the Etajima Naval Training Academy, and they have a couple of museums there where they had a little bit more about the Imperial Japanese Navy submarine, so that was quite interesting. Just checking the questions. Battleship Mikasa, yes, the last Impromptu live I did was from Mikasa. So yeah, we have been to Mikasa. We spent a couple of days on Mikasa. That was very fun. I've got video, I think pretty good video recorded, actually showing you around the open area, the upper decks, and a whole bunch of photographs as well for the lower decks of the museum interior and so forth. So yeah, she's over at Yokosuka. So I don't even know how long ago that was. Hang on a minute. So we spent 3 days in Kure. There was a day traveling. We spent 2 days in Kobe, and there was a day traveling. And the day before that was when we went to Mikasa for the second day. So yes. Anamaki history. As I said, unfortunately with the Yamato model, because she's all covered in tarp at the moment, I wasn't able to get anything live there. But as I said, I've been able to make some very useful and friendly contacts with the museum themselves. So although it won't technically be my footage, I get the impression if I want as much detailed footage and photos as I want of that, I can get it. I just have to speak to them and be very nice and polite, which isn't too bad. Hey asked, did you eat any of the submarine curry? Yes, they do. The Japanese love curry here. I would not have guessed that before coming to Japan, but they do love their curry, and it seems almost every ship, historical and more recent, in Japan has warship, that is, has their own curry. There is a yukikaze curry, but I didn't try that because I don't want to suddenly sink on my way home. But they've at the Japanese Navy Museum, let's call it that, it's a tongue twister, they have a curry where you get the rice in the shape of a little submarine. And yes, the Japanese curry, once I actually got a chance to uh, try it. It's actually really, really nice. Um, Kayomaru, Mamutek asking, yes, Kayomaru is where we're going in a couple of days. So just arrived here in Sasebo. We're here tomorrow for the museum that's here, and then the day after tomorrow we're flying well, I'm being sensible. I'm flying from Sasebo, or more accurately from the next city up. I've got to take a train. But anyway, I'm flying up to Hakadake and then driving across from Hakadake to Esashi, where the Kayomaru replica is, because that's in the north of the country. And the rest of the ship-shape crew are, I think they're being a bit mad. They're taking Shinkansen, and I love Shinkansen, don't get me wrong. We've taken Shinkansen pretty much all the way from Tokyo all the way down to here. I absolutely love Shinkansen. I do not want to be on Shinkansen for 12 to 15 hours, especially considering that it would be a 12 to 15 hour Shinkansen trip. Then we spend one day at Kayomaru, then it's another, I think, 6 to 8 hour Shinkansen trip back from Hakadake down to Tokyo, and then I have to sit on a plane for 14 hours. I have a much better things to do with my life than sit around on various forms of transport for 2 or 3 days solid over the space of 3 days. So yeah, I'm taking a short flight, which will take me about 4 hours, and there we will. I suspect I will probably get there first. Well, I know I'm going to get there first, and I'm not going to have to get up as early. Although I've so far, admittedly now, when I've been on the Shinkansen, I haven't had my GPS speedometer out all the time because, I've got other things to be doing. But when I have had it out, the highest speed I've recorded so far has been 186 miles an hour, which was actually on the Shinkansen from Hiroshima to Shintosu, which was the Shinkansen leg of this particular journey, and then from Shintosu down to Sasebo was actually a very interesting Japanese express train. So for those of you who don't know, the Japanese limited express, they call it. So basically what in most other countries would be the express, except here they have the Shinkansen. That has, and all the Japanese rail line trains, for the most part, they have what they call a green car, which is first class to the rest of us. And I got the Japanese rail pass, which with the green car option, mostly because in the green car you can pre-book seats with additional luggage space, and trust me, I do have a lot of luggage now with all the model kits and so forth that I've picked up. And so on this little limited express, obviously on Shinkansen there are several full cars set aside as green cars, but on this little express, half of the forward car is set aside as green car. So you get on, and then you can either go right or left. You go left, and there's what appears to be a small kitchen for some reason, and toilet cubicles, which are green car exclusive. Then you go through that door, and there were, I think, about a dozen seats, really plush leather reclining seats, power points, everything. I think, much better seats than I'll get on any aircraft, unless somebody wants to upgrade me to business class or something like that. Possibly even then, to be honest. And but the loud. So the really weird thing was, at least for me, was that I was right behind the driver. So the driver is obviously in the forward cabin of the forward car, but it's just separated by a glass screen, but there's a door in the glass screen, so the driver can come and go, I guess, if he wants to. And the whole thing, that glass screen has that fancy tech that you see on some videos these days, where it's I guess it's a kind of electrically operated glass, where most of the time it's transparent, and then he hits a button and it goes cloudy, which he seemed to do when we're in stations for some reason. Alex Goodson says the high speed is going north, I believe, 320 miles an hour between, or possibly kilometers, between Tokyo and Sendai. Well, I might be able I might be able to experience that very high speed because I am taking the Shinkansen from Hakodate down back to Tokyo to get my plane home. So that's the northern route, which presumably will be the really fast bit. Um, Sim Crawford says there's one level above the green car. Okay, well I didn't know about that. New Type Commander says, so besides the Mikasa and Kure, what are some other places of naval interest to see in Japan? So there's a whole ton of stuff in Yokohama, which if you are staying on the southwestern edges of Tokyo like we were, you can access by like a half-hour train journey every day. There's a whole bunch of museums in Yokohama. Naval history-wise, actually in Tokyo itself, I don't think there's too much. There's obviously the Kaimaru, all the way up north. Kobe's Maritime Museum. Actually, Kobe has I would say probably good couple of days worth of stuff to see, but it is really good stuff. So their Maritime Museum is small, but really good. Also had a really interesting dinosaur exhibit, but that's another thing. I could go on about 3D printed dinosaur skeletons for a while. They're really cool, actually. And there's a memorial museum which is all about the Japanese merchant marine and just how much of a pasting they took in the Second World War. So yeah, Kobe. Obviously Yokosuka has Mikasa, which is why we were there. They've also got a 16-inch gun. If you get on one of the pre-booked tours of the Etajima base while you're in Kure, you can either take a ferry across the bay or drive round. That's really interesting. They've got some really interesting artifacts in the museum. The main museum you can't actually take photographs in, but they also have two different types of Japanese mini-sub immediately outside, as well as a bunch of torpedoes and so forth. So they've got one of the Pearl Harbor attack mini-subs, which was salvaged and given back to them, so they're stuck in the plinth outside. It's one of the more intact ones. And behind it they've got what's effectively Kaiten Mark II. It's really tiny. I think it's the Kairu. I'll have to look up how to pronounce it properly. But it's basically a really small but proper mini sub with a massive warhead at the front, with little wings and then properly swept back little wings and for its hydroplanes. And they, at least according to the briefing note that you get, they were special purpose attack subs, i.e. Kai-10-Kamikaze, prepared for what was going to be the invasion of Japan. Obviously without the invasion of Japan they weren't used, and I mean they look fairly well thought out. I'm going to have to do a bit more research into their specs and see how fast they could actually go, but considering that the Kai-10 somehow managed to ruin the fastest torpedo in the war and make it so slow that a particularly swift tanker could outpace it, they can't exactly have done worse. P Hong 822 asked, any chance of a list of which models you've got, and if not, any model that specifically piqued your interest? So I've only got a half dozen models or so, model kits. Mostly due to luggage space, because of course a big, good, decent sized model kit takes up a lot of space in a suitcase, even if it doesn't take up a lot of weight. Though the main centerpiece is, now, if I get this right, I think the name is Hasegawa, with the model company in question, and they seem to do. I mean, a lot of Japanese companies seem to do various grades of model kit in the same scale, and weirdly enough. And I don't know if this is just our luck looking at various model shops or not, but there have been, I've spotted at least 3 different variations on kits of Akagi. Now you might think, well, obviously they're going to have kits of Akagi. No, I don't mean Akagi as in World War II. I mean, there's 3 different kits of Akagi in her 1920s configuration with the 3-stepped flight decks, which I wasn't expecting. I was expecting to see maybe 1, but 3 different ones, plus of course the single flight deck Akagi from the Second World War period. But then weirdly I haven't seen any of the Kaga in her multi-deck configuration, which you'd think there would be both, but apparently Akagi gets all the love. So anyway, where was I? So Hasegawa, they seem to do, I'm calling them the Rising Sun set. that sounds weird. Anyway, basically they do this what seems to be like a premium model line, so it's got the Japanese flag on it, hence the rising sun. So it's in 1 to 350, and they've got Nagato, Yamato, two Nagatos, one in her 1920s configuration, one in her World War II configuration. All sorts of various ships. So I've got the 1 to 350 Mikasa in that, and I also came across, I can't remember who the manufacturer is, but they do a 1 to 3000 scale, which is actually the various Japanese naval ports. So Kure, Sasebo, obviously, Yokosuka, and in each of those little 1 to 3000 kits, you also get half a dozen 1 to 3000 scale ships to go in them. Now, at least there seem to be at least 6 of the kits, because they're sort of labeled on the side, you know, number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I've only seen 5, 6, 2, and 3. The higher number ones are modern ships, so I'm obviously less interested in those. But they do, the sort of the port model will actually show the ports as they are now, or whenever they made the kits fairly recently. The older ones, at least 1, 2, and 3, maybe 4. I don't know. I haven't seen 4 around. Are of the World War II era. So I've got kits 2 and kit 3. I don't have kit 1 because I haven't found kit 1, but I'm looking at just getting that separately when I get home, because they're not particularly expensive, and hey, you get half a dozen ships and a little port for them to go in, which is cool. Yeah, and there's a few others as well, but I've got a long list of kits that I want to get. Probably have to get them imported at some point, because yeah, the sort of the premium line stuff that they do here, obviously especially for the Japanese Navy, doesn't seem to be readily available else in the UK. At least I haven't seen it in the UK. Someone saying, Alex Goodson says, lamb BBQ is famous up in Hakodate, or the clown burger, or the seafood. And did you eat Kobe? I'm guessing that means Kobe beef while in Kobe? Well, yes, of course I was going to eat Kobe beef while in Kobe. I'd be kicking myself if I went to Kobe and I didn't have at least one meal of Kobe beef. It was very nice. Aluminium Fence says, have you seen any of the naval videos World War II US bombers has been doing recently? No. Sorry, I haven't. For whatever reason, I don't get recommended those videos. Because it says Kairyu. Oh yeah, I got the pronunciation right for a change. Sorry, I'm just scrolling through the various chats, and yes, I'm holding my phone basically with one hand, so if there's any camera shake, that's why. Yes, Pihong 822, Fujimi, that's the ones who make the 1 to 3000 kits. So yeah, I just need to find kit number 1 and possibly kit number 4, if kit number 4 is a historical one. But given that it's 1 to 6, I suspect that 1 to 3 are the historical ports, and then 4 to 6 are the 1 to 3 are the historical ones, and 4 to 6 are the same ports but modern, with modern ships. We've also done a couple of harbour tours. We did one in Yokosuka and one in Kure, so going around looking at all the various Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force ships docked up, which was quite interesting. And apparently it's there you go, thank you. Alex Kudstin, thank you very much. I will definitely get in contact with you about potentially getting all those kits sent out. So I'm just scrolling through. There we go. Right. Yes, I'm just going to walk up here for a bit. So we've got 25 minutes. Oh, that's another thing I've noticed when I was in when I'm in Japan. I suppose because we're much closer to the equator. So just behind that building, as we walk along, it'll come out. There it is, the glorious sun. Now they seem to have sunset really fast here. Well, we were out on the Kure harbour tour. We actually went out just before sunset, so we got to see all the Japanese ships striking their colours as the sun set. but the sun went down really fast. I mean, you can see where it is now, setting quite nicely over this rather attractive mountain range, and I suspect that given it's what 20 coming up for 20 past 5 here, and we need to be at the burger place for dinner at 6, so I'll probably wrap up around 1:45. So what's that going to be in? Let me just check. About half an hour or so. I suspect that in half an hour we will be in darkness, and that will have at least gone behind the hills, if not necessarily pure sunset. Hey ZX, yes, any models of the Yamato model would be greatly appreciated. Any photos of the Yamato model. Oh, speaking of which, yeah, what else do they have around there? Oh, there's that fire control thing I took some photos of. Oh, and we've managed to spot almost every X-tailed submarine in the Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force. So the two most recent classes, including the Taigei's, the ones that are being built at the moment, the two most recent classes of Japanese Navy submarine have X-tails, and the one prior to that, so the earliest fully modern hull design for submarines, that has a vertical tail. And between Yokosuka, Kure, and a couple of other places, I think, although they don't have their hull numbers up on the sail, but I think just through sheer numbers that we've seen, I think we've seen almost every single modern submarine in the Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force. But obviously there'll be one or two out that probably actually actively out there. So oh, and was on Etajima. They've got Mutsu's old turret. So not the turret that you see, all canted over and looking very sad for itself in the aftermath of her destruction. But obviously the Nagatos were refitted with turrets originally intended for the Tosas and Amagis, in the aftermath of those ships not actually being built. So when you see the World War II photos of Nagato and Mutsu, for example, those turrets are, for lack of a better term, somewhat squarer. They still have curves to them, but they are a bit more blocky. So those are kind of the next generation Japanese twin 16-inch turrets. But if you look at the very early photos of Nagato and Mutsu as built, they have turrets that look a lot more like a overgrown 15-inch 42 turret. A lot of curvature to it. That being obviously the British twin 15. And those were taken off and replaced. And one of those from Mutsu is at the Etajima base. Sat I don't think it's actually sat on a barbette, but it's sat on a barbette-like supporting structure, just, vaguely pointing menacingly out to sea. So that's quite fun. Stanislav Konstantinov says, as long as you take a Hayabusa class, you'll be travelling the fastest north of Morika or Sendai. Let me just double check my rail pass. My rail pass says that, yes, I am on Hayabusa 24 service when I'm coming back from Hakodate to Tokyo. So that sounds like I'm going to go very, very fast at some point. Duke Swiss says, are you the coolest of all the boys in a foreign land? I don't know about the coolest. I was going to say I'm one of the tallest. That's not strictly true. There are a reasonable number of what for the Western world would be considered normal height people here in Japan, and a reasonable number of Japanese people who are taller than me. But admittedly, at the same time, the average height of Japanese people is a little bit shorter than me. So it is quite fun to be able to basically see over most of a crowd when you're in the train station and so forth. Also, I'm wearing my latest escaped from the US prison system neon orange, just so I can't be mistaken for anything other than a silly tourist who can't speak any Japanese. Although, I have come up with a recipe for success when it comes to dealing with people here who can't speak English, because of course I speak very little Japanese, and what Japanese words I do know, probably not that useful in day-to-day conversation. Yeah, you know, when you, just because you happen to know all the various names for battleship and battlecruiser and carrier and cruiser and uh, Type 3 bombardment shell in Japanese, this does not help you when you're trying to order a train ticket or food, unless you're in the JMSDF museum canteen, where most of the food is named after those things. So it's actually surprisingly helpful there. But anyway, now I've got a sticker which you put on my chest. Obviously not in where I'm wearing this, but I've been wearing it for the past couple of days on another shirt, and I've got a whole bunch of them. And it's basically in formal Japanese. It says words to the effect of, "I'm very sorry, but I'm from England and I only speak English. I don't speak any Japanese. I'm completely clueless on Japanese customs, and therefore I apologise if I ever unintentionally caused any offence," which in kanji is actually shorter than writing that all out in English. And most of the Japanese people who've seen it and read it think it's very funny, which is always a good place to start when you're trying to communicate through Google Translate. Who is that guy, Jin? So yeah, managed to run into us at the Enkoji Temple in Kyoto. That was quite fun. Don't know why I lost focus there for a second. Knight 6831, what was the difference between the Nagato and the Tosa Amagi class turrets? So that's a question with a very, very long answer. I suspect probably best is when I actually do my video on the Etajima visit and I can show you pictures so you can actually see them alongside each other, then that'll probably be the best. But the short version is that obviously being more modern turrets, and with slightly later manufactured guns, although they're not a whole new make and model like the 16-inch 50 compared to the 16-inch 45 in the States, but they are slightly updated guns in turrets that have got better elevation, newer working mechanisms, being somewhat more bulky or angular. They've got more interior space than the very heavily curved ones that they had before. And yes, in theory, they could have pulled the turrets off and done a kind of a Vanguard style, we're going to, increase the elevation, redo all the internals, etc., and gotten the same result. But if you've got a ton of modern twin 16-inch turrets lying around in the 1920s, and you can just go and lift off and replace, well, that's cheaper and easier. And ultimately, a purpose-designed turret is going to be better than a refit. P-Hong822 says, how much Mutsu have you seen around? A bit of the bow in a museum somewhere in Japan, but parts have been scattered around different museums. So yes, there's bits of her and bits of Mikasa in the Etajima Museum. Obviously there's some fairly big chunks of her sitting outside the Kure Museum. There's another of the 16-inch guns sitting at just randomly on the waterfront near the Yokosuka Naval Base. I think that's all the bits of Mutsu I've seen so far, at least that I can remember. Thank you very much, Emperor Tiger Star. 18 Rob Smith says, have you managed to squeeze into any traditional Japanese army yet? Yes, we did go to a samurai and ninja museum, although in the finest traditions we did not see any ninjas. So yes, me and Dr. Dan went to the Samurai and Ninja Museum, and we did a katana class, and part of that meant at the beginning you got to try on your traditional samurai exercise gear. They had some replica armor that you could try on, and then you walked us through some basic katana exercises, and a few duels with foam katana, because obviously anyone can sign up for these classes. So to prevent injury, you're only allowed to hit each other with bits of with these well, in HEMA terms we'd call them a boffer, so it's not just a pool noodle. It is, it's got a degree of control over it, but it's certainly not hard plastic or blunt steel. So that was quite fun. Obviously with me doing reenactment in HEMA, although I didn't let on at the time because that would be being a bit of bragging, but when we did a whole series of matches against various people, the swordsman who was teaching everybody was like, "Have you done this before?" So I was like, "Maybe. I might know my way around a sword." Blockio 999. Have you run into any particularly low doorways yet? Not too many. I have run into one or two, but that's one of the reasons a hat is always useful. Don't forget highly stylish Japanese tote bags as a souvenir. Oh, we got a few of those. Do they still have plastic food on display in the windows of restaurants? I would say about a third of them do. Blockio, drop me a message and I can send you either just print out versions or label set versions of my "I'm sorry, I'm a filthy gaijin who doesn't know how to speak Japanese" stickers. It's 36, so let me just double check the time. 20 minutes. I've got about 15 minutes. Oh yeah, that was another interesting thing. When we've been going through various museums, so we went to, say, for example, like the Hiroshima. We obviously went to the Hiroshima Peace Museum and so forth. But we also went to Hiroshima Castle. So I'm just going to switch hands because my right hand's getting tired of holding the phone. We went to Hiroshima Castle, and there and a bunch of other places, they have armor, obviously from various periods, which isn't that surprising. You go to European castles and museums, they have armor from all sorts of periods strung up in all sorts of interesting places. But one of the things I found much more interesting was they have a bunch of swords, and not just katana. So we've got wakizashi, nodachi, obviously katana as well, and I forget what the big one is. There's a comically large, like, Japanese version of a Zweihander, and that is, and spears as well. So all sorts of bladed weapons have been preserved, and of course there's the katana on the end of a stick, the polearm version, and they have a bunch of those. But whereas if you go to most European museums, there might be a handful of probably mostly royal associated swords from the late Middle Ages, and even then you can tell they're quite old. There's piecing and restoration and so forth. That we've seen, I think, at least 24 of various Japanese bladed weapons from the 12th and 13th centuries that basically look new. They've kept them in such good condition and kit. It's like, well, stick a couple of handle scales on them because they keep them off, because obviously on the tang, that's where you've got the maker's mark and so forth. But yeah, if you wrap the tang up in a handle and put it on a table, you'd be very hard pressed to tell just to the untrained eye that wasn't a brand new replica fresh from the forge. Also, interestingly enough, I learned while I was there that the katana has gone through various lengths. So obviously, and without again diverging off into arms, hand weapons, arms and armor, it starts off as a straight sword, and actually the really, really long version of the katana actually comes about fairly early in its history, and then it drops back down fairly quickly to the traditional length of the katana that you see most of the time. Which makes sense given the drawing style that they're using, because the sort of 90 centimeter blades, I don't think you could physically draw that the way that the what's now the traditional drawing style is actually done. You'd have to have it mounted in some other way. Naginata, that's it. Sorry, I don't know why, but every so often today the phone is playing up. Let me just see if I can clean the lens. Just messing around with its autofocus for some reason. Oh yeah, the other funny thing about those Japanese pole arms and so forth has been, at least to me, has been that an awful lot of them, it seems to be just exactly the same blade, just at different scales. So, like if you look at a tanto, a wakizashi, a katana, and a naginata, it's like this is exactly the same blade profile. It's just you've made it longer. But yeah, that I guess it worked for them. Dave O. Miara says, can you recommend a model kit of Yamato? Depends on your level of skill and how much time you want to put into it. They actually have some pretty decent 1 to 700 waterline models here, which are about, at least here, they're about 15 quid. So what would that be, 15 pounds, $20 or so. I don't know what those same models are actually sold for overseas. But if you want just a good serviceable model of Yamato, but you don't want to go break the bank and have 1,000,001 tiny details, those are pretty good. But then the Hasegawa 1 to 300 scale ones, and there's a bigger one as well I saw somewhere. But I mean, it's Yamato. There's about a dozen different model variations in varying scales and levels of detail. Yeah, and like I said, the sun is setting, so we'll stay like this because you can see the sun is setting there just on the mountain. Let's see how quickly it all disappears. Oops, someone said. Yes. Oh, that's the spaceship. So that's the thing. I've actually been on the lookout for a model of space battleship Yamato, and there's Infinity Plus One Gundams, and various models from various anime series which I don't recognise, and so forth. But I've only so far seen one space battleship Yamato model, and that was tucked in a glass cabinet for some reason away from all the other model kits at the Don Quixote in Tokyo. I expected it to be more, but there you go. Cactus says, remember the phrase import duties? Well, that is actually one of the things, because the model kits are comparatively cheaper here to what I would pay for the same thing in the UK. I've been keeping track of the various bits and pieces that I've been buying, and at the moment I am under the value where I need to declare anything for customs, which is good, because yeah, the model kit's relatively cheap and take up a lot of space but not a lot of weight. So like the 1 to 350 Mikasa kit, that is in one of my big suitcases, and that takes up, I would say, easily, what would it be? Probably at least a fifth, maybe a quarter of the internal volume. And that thing cost me like 30 quid. So I'm not going to have to pay any import duties on that thing, but it's taking up a huge amount of space. Yeah, you can see so just in the time we've been talking, the sun has actually gone down below the horizon. Well, not below the horizon, gone down below the mountains, just there. There'll be a little bit before it goes actually down completely. Leonidas Rex says there's a couple of very nice 1 to 200 scale kits as well. Yes, and if you do happen to be in Hiroshima, so in Japan there's a line of big hobby model shops called Tam Tam, and you do have to be careful when you're searching for them. Search for Tam Tam, so Tam hobby shop, because there's also a chain of restaurants called Tam Tam, which are completely different. They don't sell plastic. Well, at least I don't think they do. Probably get in trouble if they did, considering they're restaurants. But anyway, the Tam Tam hobby stores, there's a few of them around in various places. They're actually really good. They've got model trains, planes, ships, cars. Most of the Japanese model train stuff is N-gauge, and airsoft, which was quite fun. I was very, very tempted by they've got a gas blowback Winchester lever action, which you can't find for love nor money in the UK, and I was looking at it going, that's also actually relatively affordable. I'd really like to bring it back, but I cannot imagine the conniption fit that Border Control and Customs would have if they saw what looks like a rifle in my suitcase. So yeah, that's unfortunately that's not going to be a thing with me bringing back, because, well, I didn't buy it. So Um, P Hong says the new kit Space Battleship mounted from 3199 is a very nice model. Can definitely recommend. Yeah, so I need to track that down. I just can't find them anywhere. But anyway, I say the Tam Tam hobby shops, they're really good. And the one in Hiroshima, um, it has a whole ton of proper scale models, which basically are the personal collection of one guy who's associated with the hobby store. And he just put them out in front of the store. You can have a look. There's there's about 15, 16 of the things. They're mostly around 6 foot long. The destroyers are a little bit smaller, obviously, but there's a bunch of battleships and carriers, and there's a couple of even bigger models. So there's a Takao model and a Fuso model that are even bigger scale. So the big Fuso model, which if you take the lift up to that floor is the first one you see, I think that thing's like 10, 11 feet long. It's absolutely gargantuan and incredibly detailed. And then the funny thing is you get round the other side of this kind of big U-shaped display area, and I was thinking, hang on a minute, I've seen this before. And it turns out it was another model of Fuso, just did the same 6 foot scale as all the other models there. But there you go. Wing Hungry, and any food you enjoyed while in Japan? Oh, loads. The various bakery products, various bread products have been really nice. As I said, the Japanese, they do know their way around meat, which has been very pleasing. The curries, the rice. Oh, well, that was the other interesting thing. I did occasionally, obviously, do the Western thing and try and find the local branches of Burger King, McDonald's, and KFC, mostly out of vague interest. And that was actually very interesting because they have very, very localized menus. I think Burger King was the one that's the closest, although not exactly, to what you would get in the UK, in a UK Burger King or a US Burger King for that matter. But the McDonald's and KFC menus are, they are McDonald's and KFC menus, but they're a couple of steps removed from what you get in the UK. I mean, you're not going to get soy sauce enriched burgers in the UK, for example. Although they are very nice. Although don't tell Dr. Clark I said that because he hates them. Oh yeah, sorry then. Because I'm doing this on my phone, when people are sending me messages, the notifications are coming through and it's right next to you. Sorry about that, but that's the hazards of an impromptu live. If I'd actually thought this through a bit better, I could have got my handle and put the phone on silent notification. But considering it's coming up to about 5 minutes before I need to head out to find this burger place we're going to be eating at, there's not really a point why I'm going to be doing anything. Navi, yes, yeah, I have actually. I got most of all the models I got. I've got them from dedicated model shops. I didn't get anything from the Don Quixote. It was just I was in the Don Quixote mostly looking for a replacement suitcase for my one that died. But yeah, it was just weird that was literally the only place I've seen Space Battleship Yamato. Crack Texas, any chance of seeing random helicopter destroyers while there? Not well. I don't know if Izumo and the older two are in Sasebo. I guess we'll find out tomorrow. I have seen Kaga. She's in Kure. Have you seen Godzilla at all during your visit? I've seen lots of models of Godzilla, and actually, interestingly, one or two of the model shops, they have their naval section, and then they have their Godzilla section, and then at the end of the Godzilla section, because it's the newest film, you've got the Godzilla -1 section, and they actually have Takao and Yukikaze model kits with the Godzilla section because of obviously both of those ships featuring quite prominently in Godzilla -1. I've seen the Giant Gundam as well. Have you checked out Japanese 7-Elevens? Yeah, Japanese 7-Elevens, they're everywhere, and yes, they are very different to the US. 3 of the hotels I've stayed at have actually had 7-Elevens built into their ground floors, which has been quite useful for grabbing drinks and snacks without having to step outside into the ridiculous heat. Autonomous buses? No, haven't seen any of those. Yeah. I don't know if you heard that trumpet. That came from over there somewhere. Literally over there. So I'm guessing Sasebo Maritime Self-Defense Force Base is somewhere in that direction because, yeah, the sun's setting, so they're going to be doing colours. Blockio, no, I haven't bought any Gundam kits, basically because I've only got so much luggage space, and I'm actually sending my 2 big bags from here with the luggage transfer service straight to Haneda Airport because I do not want to have to drag 2 big suitcases and a backpack and a roll-on suitcase on 2 different flights and a couple of Shinkansens in the next 3 or 4 days. So fortunately, it turns out if I drop off my big bags tomorrow morning at the luggage transfer place, which is in the station, then they will arrive at Haneda Airport on Sunday afternoon, and my flight is on Sunday evening. So I can intercept my own luggage without having to haul it around. So I just need to make sure that my essentials for filming and clothes and so forth, just 2 or 3 days worth of kit are just in my carry-on luggage. Alex Kudsin, yes, I didn't bring a swimming kit, so I'm avoiding the onsens. And to be fair, the hotel bathroom facilities are really cool. 1 or 2 of them have had baths that are very, very tall, just not very deep. Not deep, as in long. So basically, you have to scrunch up and sit in them, but you then sit in them up to your neck, as opposed to more, I guess, Western style baths where you lay down in them. Yeah, so there we go. That's the sun is going. Oh, and the lights have just come on. Hopefully you can see that. Yeah, all these lights just popped on. Sydney saying it's 2 a.m. on the Pacific coast. Right, so with that said, it's the burger place. If I remember correctly, I have to go back through the train station and then past my hotel and off to the left. So I'm going to go there. I don't know if you can hear the impending racket, but a massive swarm of Japanese sparrows. What's the Japanese for savvy? Anyway, they have all landed in this tree. It is actually the first large-scale Japanese bird life I've seen outside of the occasional seagull and the ubiquitous, I don't know exactly what they are, but there's some species of Japanese bird of prey that's kind of like size-wise a cross between a large buzzard and a large kite, and they're absolutely everywhere. What they're eating, I don't know, because I haven't seen anything else. I saw a herring yesterday, but yeah, all the little Japanese sparrows. Oh, they've all quiet down. Oh, well, they're very noisy. No, they're not shikaras. That's all a bunch of sparrows. I'm not going to scare them out of their tree, but I think they're the same species as European house sparrows, but they're just a little bit smaller. Hang on a second. No, these aren't sparrows. Or maybe they are. Maybe they're a Japanese species, but they're quite small actually. I don't know why I'm showing you that, because there's no way you're going to see them. You can just hear them. Anyway. With that said, it's time for me to head for dinner, and since I don't want to be very rude and just go marching through, yapping into my phone in the middle of the railway station, and I need to cross the street without getting run down, I will bid you all adieu, and we shall see. I might be able to do one more impromptu live. It's just going to depend how matters work out over the next few days, because my flight home is on Sunday. It's a very packed few days coming up, but there are theoretically a few dead spaces. Who knows, maybe I'll do a live from the Shinkansen. If the green car is empty and it's just me, then I might as well entertain myself and can see how the Shinkansen Wi-Fi holds up to a live stream at 200 plus miles an hour. That'd be quite fun. So yeah. See you all at some point in the future while I figure out how to switch this off.